to the Lituation Room. What is good, everyone? It's your girl, Alicia B, and you are now in the place to be. Welcome to the Lituation Room. Y'all, it is episode 2 of season 3. I can't believe that we are here at this moment. But, okay. So I'm probably going to be a little bit of a fangirl during this episode, so it's okay. I feel like I'm a fangirl at every episode, but it's okay. You know, I have to give a nice little disclaimer, a warning. Viewers' discretion is advised. So we have the lovely Taylor Crumpton in the building. And I'm going to just let her introduce herself because I feel like I'm not going to give her enough credit to how amazing and bomb she is. So go ahead.
Sweetheart, that makes my heart so happy. Yeah, I would like to say the professional bio is like music, pop culture, and politics writer, based in Oakland, California, originally from Dallas, Texas, 972-214-469. Got to rep all 3 area codes because I'm truly a bird at heart. The unprofessional bio is the hot girl journalist. Y'all can already infer what that means, but I've been that way. I moved that way. And right now, my @name is Taylor the Realist in honor of Big Tech Southside the Realist because I'm writing about Big Tech right now. So no matter what the @name is, remember, it is the hot girl journalist through all seasons, through all quarters, always, forever, and always. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Okay. First of all, y'all already know this is about to be a bomb ass interview because she called herself the hot girl. All right. So we just gonna get right into it. So obviously, you gave the professional bio. So music journalist, social activist, stuff like that. So what's your journey? Like, how did you get to this point so that listeners and viewers who aren't familiar with you can get a little bit of backstory?
Of course. So I always start off by telling people I'm a non-traditional journalist. And I say that because when I first started out, I very much internalized me not graduating from journalism school, which is known as J school, as like as an indicator of like my less than quality work, which in fact, years later, me not going to journalism school, and I think me not being formally trained allows me to connect with folks and be and write from a place of authenticity and very genuineness. So I always want to start off by saying, whether you're going to go into journalism, A&R, management, any type of creative field, like embrace that non-traditional route. Because I literally started my journalism career shooting my shot at the then editor of Glamour magazine, Cindy Levi, because they were working on Abortion America package. At the time, I was an undergraduate student who was also doing abortion rights organizing. And like most of us, was up late night on Twitter. I saw her tweeting and was like, let me pitch this. And surprisingly, like my pitch made it in, but I was so excited to like even make it through the door that I didn't ask her about payment. So I tell people all the time, though my first byline was glamour, and at the time I was just like, oh my God, glamour. I didn't think to be like, oh, you actually put in a lot of work and that should have been valued. So always be paid for your labor. And then from there, I was still in like college. That was done going into my senior year of undergrad. And after Trump got elected, which was like my senior year of undergrad, that was when Teen Vogue was switching to like its more political writing that it's known now. So they're asking for call for pitches. Pretty much I had pitched like the fall semester of my senior year, and I didn't hear back from Teen Vogue until like damn near a couple of weeks before graduation, because fun fact, the editor who I had pitched to had left the publication, and when I finally got in contact with her 40 days later, which is like the term really months later, she was like, I no longer work at Teen Vogue. And then at the time, Philip Picardi, when he was there, was like, sweetheart, we have never seen your pitch. So like weeks before I like graduated, I was like, I'm just a terrible fucking writer. And like, that's why they didn't hit me, when it was like, oh no, baby, this literally never made it to us. So Philip connected me with the then news and politics editor at the time, Allison Maloney. And she started me off at the most exciting beat, which is news stories, which is like everything you see on like Associated Press and Rutgers, where you like, did somebody really have to write this? And it was like, yes. And I like tell everyone, like, before you get to do the glamour cover stories, you need to really be humbled in that news department, because you have to try to make this the most exciting, enticable fact check
Right.
blurb you can. So I'm really grateful for Allison and Teen Vogue. They really were like the first home where I really got to be like a contributor. But you know, something that we're seeing right now, especially a lot of Black political journalists are experiencing burnout, and it's just a very hard beat to sustain. And I was like, well, like I always do, went to Twitter to tweet about my emotions. And I think if I can remember from memory, I was like, I'm getting tired about writing about white supremacy. Someone please let me write about music. And Desiree Thompson, who was the then editor at Vibe, was like, do you want to contribute to our like women's end of the year list, which is also a great way to like sneak into a publication. It's like the end of year list, because they're like maybe short 150, 200 word blurbs, but you can at least like practice writing in that beat. And I say that because even though now I'm known as a music writer, I did fucking terrible on those blurbs. Like I remember I sent them to like my peers who were like music editors or journalists, and they were like, okay, so you have the idea, but I think you need to like do a little bit more reading on music journalism, because even though I was a journalist, like different beats have different languages, right?
Right.
And from there I was like, okay, like I really like this beat. I've always loved hip hop. It's my first love. Yesterday, if y'all watching this, was like the anniversary of Brown Sugar, and I literally have the bag that is like, when did you fall in love with hip hop, from the Gumbo, a hip hop publication. I just spent like 2018 to 2019 just like grinding at music publications. I really wanted to be in that space of quality. I was writing for blogs, I was writing for local publications in Oakland. I was like trying to get in where I fit in on national pubs. So 2019 was the year where I felt comfortable doing music and politics, and I started doing more pop culture till now in 2020. I think the best way that I've been summarized has been like a culture writer, which is great because I can do the music pieces, but then also I can go back and do reported pieces. And especially right now in the election, I've got commissioned for like politics pieces. So you see, it really took me like 3 years of humbling even to like be classified as a culture writer. So that is like my long story short journey to where I am today.
I'm glad that you call yourself a non-traditional journalist, because I feel like in this generation especially, we're very known for, okay, so this is how my life is going to go, and this is what I have to do to get there. And I feel like I'm the same way, because when I was in school, I originally went for criminal justice. And maybe like junior year, I was like, hey, maybe I don't want to prosecute people, because like maybe I don't want them to like come and find me, you know? So I ended up figuring out what I wanted to do. And at the time, I felt like I was so late. But I feel like the reason why I've been so good in what I'm doing right now is because I embraced the fact that I didn't really go the traditional route. Yeah. Like a lot of the things that I'm doing now are quote unquote what people would have done in college or something. But I definitely feel like that's a very powerful thing to mention, because not everything is going to be the way that people lay things out. So you also mentioned how you're a cultural writer. So I've noticed with a lot of your writing, you bridge the gap from the hip hop culture and social justice. So how important is that for you to bridge the two together in your writing?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, hip hop is one of the most powerful entities we have. You know, it is a fluid institution, meaning that it's social, it's political, it's cultural, it can be gendered, right? When we look at like the birth of hip hop was, you know, if we contextualize it, all of these social, economic, and policies were fucking terrorizing the Bronx. I mean, brown people, Black people, right? There's a reason why hip hop was birthed in the era it was birthed in, right? Same thing can be about blues and jazz. And I think the best thing I like about being a culture writer is that I can really delve into like those radical political understandings, which is different in hip hop journalism when you're doing maybe a write-up or a premiere or a profile or feature, unless the like artist is doing like some very social justice matter. The good thing about culture writer is that you can give hip hop its due diligence in treating it like an institution, because we also have to remember, though right now we're living in like the post blog era, we have Complex and we have Fader and we have all these music publications. In the beginning, hip hop journalism wasn't seen as something that was credible and didn't have a life. So part of like me being a culture writer is like also continuing on like the journalists who have come before me have really solidified hip hop's credibility. When we think about it, no one questions rock, no one questions country music, nobody really questions pop. There are books on it, there are studies, there are college courses. Yet when we talk about hip hop, which is like I think over 50 years old at this current moment, there's still this treatment in media and sometimes pop culture that it's like, okay, is there really any merit? And I'm like, there is so much scholarly merit in Meg twerking her ass and strippers that y'all don't even know. Strippers really should be treated like goddamn Marines for the amount of stuff that they do. Atlanta hip hop would not be what it is today without the strippers. And they need to be thanked and analyzed and critiqued. And that's what I love being able to do as a culture writer.
Yeah, I definitely feel like when you listen to hip hop, especially like early hip hop, I feel like they kind of give you the landscape of how the world was going. And very like, even if you didn't listen to early hip hop, I mean, Jay-Z alone was very vocal with what was going on and how he felt about it in his music. So I feel like people definitely forget that hip hop isn't just, putting some nice little words together and making it rhyme. A lot of the times it's deeper meanings to what they're talking about, especially I feel like with now today, a lot of people are focusing on the songs and raps that have come out based on how 2020 has been going. A lot of people were on the fence about how they liked Lil Baby's song that came out, and they were questioning why him, and did he have enough, like you said, credibility to be talking about it. But I feel like as a Black man in America, he has enough credibility to talk about his experience. So how do you feel about their kind of minds opening up to different genres and lanes in the hip hop industry?
Yeah, I think we got to understand that like hip hop is not a monolith, right? And I understand that some people question the intention behind a rapper like Lil Baby, who was more known for like, like club hits, trying to make like a socially conscious track. I understand why, because there's also some people who are like, it's very popular to capitalize on the movement as it's happening. And I make space for that, but also like, let's hear the song and the intention before we fully make that critique, right? Because all of us right now are experiencing so much trauma. The pandemic, the countless lives we've lost to police violence, right? The intersections of how those fall in our identities. And if that is what Lil Baby wants to do, if that's what DaBaby, who did his release, he like remixed his song for the BET Awards and reenacted the Floyd video, like they are still allowed to do that. I don't think we should limit their autonomy. But then after that song is released, I think people can also kind of like place that in their history and be like, okay, is this signaling a shift or a change? It's just something they did in response now. I think so many people want to just attack first when you got to contextualize everything in the moment, right? These things just don't randomly come out of somewhere. There's birth and there's intention. And if Lil Baby and DaBaby just wanted to like make their George Floyd songs and then go back to doing like their genre, like that's also acceptable, right? There's like fluidity. So I think that is the greatest kind of like issue I'll stress, is like we have to contextualize everything. Like you got to put it in context, because we all have been in situations, whether in Twitter, whether in real life, where something we've said or done gets pulled out of context and it just loses that original meaning. So I always encourage people, like, if you're going to write about it, if you're going to pitch about it, if you're going to talk about it, be mindful of your surroundings before you go out there. Because as people who are journalists or produce things that live on these social platforms, and even if you delete it, someone has screenshotted it, believe me, you got to be able to stand behind what you did in that moment.
Right. I feel like the fact that we need to conceptualize what's happening is very powerful. What issues do you feel like are happening in today's culture that need more attention, especially in the more Black hip hop culture?
I'm always going to advocate for us having more openly queer and trans rappers. I think Young and May has done a good job. Kid Kin,
Hmm.
fantastic Chicago drill rapper. But there's so many other people who hip hop outlets aren't paying attention to. I have yet, to my knowledge, see a hip hop outlet do a pride package like they do Women's History Month packages, right? It
Right.
seems like the past 12 months hip hop publications have been like, okay, like they've put more attention towards women in hip hop. Like women haven't been in hip hop from the beginning.
Right.
And we know why women haven't haven't been portrayed like we've been in hip hop from the beginning. I'll just say, to the audience on the record, and then I'll leave it at that. But I think we really need to also like create spaces for these people who gatekeepers may see as non-traditional
Hmm.
to be accepted in the hip hop community because they are hip hop and be given those resources, right? I think
Right.
the day I was on Twitter and I can't think of this rapper's name, it's gonna irritate me, but it was like this trans drill rapper and they were just going the fuck off. And I was like, I sat there for a minute and like replayed it back and I was like, oh, this shit is good, right? I love seeing the freestyles in the parking lot, the freestyles outside the housing project, right? I love that because if we have to be completely honest, that's how it started, and
Hmm.
it shouldn't their talent shouldn't be lifted just if they happen to be queer or some type of other identity that mainstream hip hop doesn't want to cover. So I think
Right.
we always gotta like find those pockets because that's when the genre and the culture really evolves. It's like in those pockets, right? And if we don't, then we just have like the same songs over and over again, the same style, the same technique. And then it was kind of like a couple of years ago where you couldn't tell the difference between what region an artist was from. It was like
Yeah.
a one size fits all. And we have to think about how excited everybody was with like the drill movement, right? A bunch of
Hmm.
gatekeepers were like it felt like New York had found its voice back in hip hop, right?
Right.
So we always got to chase after the pockets because that's what's going to remind us about how like different hip hop sounds in different areas. And I love regional hip hop because it's always going to sound different from what's being played on top 40. And that's so needed.
Right. Me being from the DMV hip hop is
My God.
completely different from mainstream hip hop. And I feel like that's what made me so appreciative of regional music is because when I went other places, I was like, what is this? Oh, that's dope. Like, what is that? Coming from the area that I'm in, they're very much, there's places where mumble rap is very iconic for them. Here, we've had people I don't really know if there's a particular sound realistically, because there's so many different things from the DMV. But, we've had big artists like Rico, but there's still some really amazing underground rappers who, quote unquote, don't fit the hip hop box. And
Yeah.
I feel like with hip hop, like you said earlier, I feel like pop has such a beautiful thing where there's range. Anyone from Sam Smith to Adele can be in one thing, but we got Ariana Grande flipping from different genres of music. So I feel like why can't that be in hip hop? Why is it that, like you mentioned, Young and May, when she came out, they was like, "What's that?" They don't look like the
Yeah.
standard rapper. What's this? But then all of a sudden you hear Young and May spit, and you're like, oh, okay, all right. It's
Mhm.
like the package for hip hop has to come in this predetermined notion.
Mhm.
So, what do you feel like is a way that we can break that barrier without, having that package that has to be for hip hop?
Yeah, I think one of the most beautiful things we've seen really in like the last decade or 5 years is the way in which these quote unquote non-traditional rappers or these non-packaged rappers have used social media to build their own platforms outside of signing, right? They've been able to cultivate a following and an audience without the backing of a major institution. Because we have to realize back in the day, like, there's a reason why all the 90s raps were like, I signed a major deal. Even late 2000s, you heard people like, I signed to Rockefeller, I signed to Bad Boy, right? It held this like certain impetus back in the day because you had all of the like the record industry behind you, where now we lived in the generation where like rappers blew up on Tumblr and Twitter and Instagram and shit. Even I think Ski Master Slump got on Vine. Like we have seen these rappers just use social media to really be like, you're gonna fuck with me. I mean, like the most famous example we have is Cardi, right?
Yeah.
Cardi went from stripping to Instagram personality to reality TV star to be one of the few women who won a Grammy for a rap album.
And so many people were on the fence and biting each other's heads off when she decided to take that leap. And to me at that time, I didn't understand why it was so irritating to people that she was taking that leap, because we don't know. Well, I didn't. Let me speak for myself. I didn't know that she was using social media and was already rapping before. She just used her platform to build off of. So I definitely feel that.
Yeah, like Cardi, famous. Sweetie started freestyling in the car, right? Everybody knows about Meg's freestyles wherever she was at. And you know, it's funny because now they're thought of as like examples. Everybody is searching for the next Meg, the next Cardi, the next Sweetie, the next person who is authentic with their fan base and genuine, but can also give you like those top 40 charting songs. When if we look in the beginning, like Cardi was doubted. Sweetie undid a lot of criticism for after Icy Girl. Meg avoided a little bit of it because she raps in a very traditional style of freestyling, but then they decided to focus on like her sexuality and sex appeal, right? So we have to understand that I think we're moving into the 2020s, as we can say, when so many artists are seeking and rapping about wanting to be independent. I think like one of the famous things is like, Rihanna fulfilled her 6th album contract, so we may not get an album from her. And I think we also have to understand that like, we don't know the contract that Nicki was in. We don't know the contract that Rihanna was in, right? And now they're elder statesmen. We don't get that much new music for them. Is it because they're done with their record contract, whether it's predatory or not, and they've like dipped? So I'm definitely interested to see like when we're entering 2030, God willing, we all survive a pandemic and a Trump administration, what hip hop is gonna look like.
Right.
Because 2020 rap is completely different than rap in 2010.
I can't imagine like the fallen rappers, the people who they're like, oh my God, the gods of hip hop, like Tupac and Biggie, how would they be in this world of 2020 hip hop? Because I feel like that's what people are. They said the same thing about R&B, where they're like, R&B's dead, like, but it's just that the music is changing. The things that people are going through are changing. The way that production is working, like producers aren't going to make the same beat that people in the 90s made. I don't think that people realize that. Yeah, we can sample, but the whole beautiful part of music in general is the creativity behind it. Like we're all bridged together by this universal language, no matter our religion, our background, our languages even. So it's just the fact that music has been an outlet for people. I definitely feel like hip hop is in its changing spectrum. It's in its changing season. I feel like that's when hip hop really kind of was seen in a more mainstream level, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't still happening.
Yeah, I think for me, hip hop is so interesting because in the 80s, it was counterculture. And then in the 90s, it became mainstream culture. And now when we talk about hip hop, we call it the culture, right? So every decade, hip hop's connotation in its place changes, where we've gone from a counterculture movement to it crossing over into mainstream, to it being the culture, to now to it being the world's most popular genre. So I think, you know, when we think about the old heads at the Hot 97, the Fab Five, Freddie, the Funkmaster Flex, for them to witness something that was counterculture that they built become this worldwide thing is kind of scary. And I think the fear is rightful, because I don't think if we were able to go back in time to the 1930s when Billie Holiday was singing Strange Fruit, that now blues would be regarded as a white genre, that she would believe it. I don't think if we were to go back, we'd be like, did you know that in 2020, most of the blues festivals are held by white people? And she was like, they call this the devil's music because we're Black. And we're like, fun fact, completely changes in a couple of decades, in less than 100 years. So I think some of the genre's pioneers get fearful, but like also that like fearful halts innovation. You know, I'm from the South, so I remember when Southern hip hop started entering mainstream hip hop, because we've always had Southern hip hop. When hip hop started, it started in the South as well. But when we got that opening in the early 2000s and we were on Billboard, it was just like, you know, like it was wild, right? They were like, I remember like Jules Santana was like anal. In fact, Joe was like, we need to build relationship with the Southern rappers. And then like, you know, there were so many coastal rappers. It was funny because in the early 2000s, the East Coast and the West Coast kind of smashed the rivalry just to shit on the South. Like they literally, it's like the holding hands emoji where it's like, let's just fuck up this region. And it's funny now when we talk about how Meg is the hottest rapper in the world and she's from the South, because if you would have gone back when it started, when they weren't even invited to the hip hop table, it's wild. So, you know, our genre has a delicate balance of having to manage gatekeeping and innovation, because we all know when something becomes mainstream, right, every single year it loses a little bit of its origins. It's like how a lot of the popular rappers these days were like, yeah, I grew up on Drake and J. Cole and not Jay-Z. And some old heads were like, what the what? And you have to understand, like, based on their age, they're not about to go back and put in a Jigga track. Like, they're going to put in some Drake and some J. Cole and some Kendrick. And yes, they're still invited to the table. It's like when Little Uzi came out and he was like, I like Haley Williams. And it's like, all Black people love Paramore. The hell? Like, they're...
I love me some Paramore. Come on.
I love freaking Paramore, right? Some Hot Topic ass shit. Like, Rico is a great example of that. So I think that's going to be the continuing thing as we go into the 20s. It's like, what is the balance between gatekeeping and innovation in our space?
Right. I definitely feel like that's going to be, I mean, that's already the thing that we're butting heads with, but I feel like within this next 10 years, it's definitely going to be the thing that is either going to make or break hip hop in a sense. But, that was really good because I had to take a moment. Okay, so back to you. Let's talk about you, because like this is all about you. So a little birdie on Twitter, because I'm a Twitter stalker. Essence came out with an article that says you're one of the 21 Black girls who's shaking shit up.
That they did.
And you're on the list with like Marseille Martin, who is a baddie. You know, Marseille is really out here doing the damn thing. We on Cash Doll. I do not want to mispronounce her name, so if she wants to like drop it and tell me how to pronounce it. But Karish Rogers, who is the creator of Flexing My Melanin, Flexing My Complexion, sorry. But how does it feel to, you know, as you were talking about being a non-traditional culture writer, like how does it feel from, you know, your starting point to now having people recognize you for your passion and your work?
Yeah, it's wild, y'all. Like I think people who like follow me when I saw it and I was like, oh shit. Like I was like, I think people assume like, oh, they must have got a call or interview. I was like, nah, I was on the timeline just like y'all. I think I was like ordering food on Uber Eats and was like, why do I have this tag? And I was like, whoa! So I think it's honored to be recognized by my peers in the industry. Brooklyn White, who wrote the listicle, associate editor at Girls United at Essence, is a fantastic writer. I look up to her work all the time. So just to like be placed alongside so many amazing Black women is wonderful. But then to be acknowledged by Brooklyn, who's someone who I like consider a sister and like just a great person in this space, is wonderful. But I am such a crier. I love crying. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Crying is
And,
so therapeutic.
oh my God, I love a good cry session. It makes me want to cut some onions right now just to let it out. But last year was the first time I got recognized by my peers at Jack Jones Literary Arts as a cultural critic to color. And I saw the list and I was next to like people who were like on the New York Times and staff writers and editors and folks whose books I have. And I was like, little old me is placed next to them. Are you serious? So yeah, I hope to like never lose that spirit. It's so wonderful, but at the same time, it just makes me like grind even more. So I always give myself like a couple hours to fangirl, and in the group chat, call my parents, even though they have no idea what my career is. And yeah, like keep it pushing. I'm honored. My mama says don't let me get too big headed. So I'm always gonna be cool when I'm with it. But it's a joy, and I tell people all the time, like I love all of the people who follow me. I don't know how y'all find me. I truly don't. I would like Twitter to tell me the algorithm. More people came to the shit show. What's up? But a lot of times my articles wouldn't trend or go viral, be shared, or be talked about if it's not for every single person who follows me. So I always say that like my success is an extension of y'all. So like embrace and share it. And you know, as soon as I get an award, I be tweeting like, oh shit, we turning up tonight. Shots. Somebody gave me Crown Royal. And it's just like a bunch of
Real
like
hot girl style.
gifts. Yeah. Definitely driving the boat by myself in quarantine because I'm not gonna have y'all coming here and infect me. That's not going to happen today. But it's the joy and the blessing. I hope it just inspires other people to keep on grinding. As I tell folks, I literally turned 25 July 31st. So like I am not all old head. I very much consider myself a baby in a lot of music journalism conversations. So like don't let this age or this lack of formal training like make you not want to be in the room as your whole self, because I've gotten here in my career literally by showing up as my full hot girl self with all of my inappropriate tweets on Twitter.
I don't remember what article it was that I found you off of, but once I started following you on Twitter, I was like, this girl is so authentic. And I feel like in a world where it's very, very fake, very facade, it's very heartwarming that there's someone who is not going to change themselves just because of what they do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why people are so connected to artists like Cardi and Meg, because they're very, this is how I am, and that's on period, and that's it. That's what you're gonna get. So that's why I started following you, because I was like, yeah, I need all of these tweets. I need her freaking out on these basketball tournaments, even though I don't know nothing about basketball.
I'm a hot mess, everyone. It was a bad week, and if y'all followed me, I was live drunk tweeting the Cowboys and the Texas Longhorns game, so can't apologize for that. I have the state of Texas tattooed on my ass, the Dallas Aries coat tattoo on my upper thigh, so it's a bird over here. It's a bird.
How do you feel Dallas and now Oakland have shaped you as a person and as a writer?
Man, you know, as I said earlier, I love regional hip hop because I always root for the underdog. I love being in cities that aren't the New York or the LA, right? I love, like when I went to grad school in Philly really made me love and appreciate the East Coast because like they just move different. And I think folks like Baltimore, just being in contrast to like DC, they have like that move underdog a little bit harder mentality. And the same thing with like Oakland prior to the rampant gentrification that's going on right here. It was already a hub of like Black liberation from like the Black Panthers and on. Right. So I think all of them has made me appreciate the love I have for my hometown a lot more, because Dallas, as people have said on Twitter, is a white Houston, and no, the fuck it, it's not. Niggas live in Dallas. And they've also like encouraged me to be really bold and authentic and advocate really hard for these other regions to be given the due diligence and respect. And I think a great example of that is in the DMV Baltimore area. Lawrence and Domo rep the DMV Baltimore everywhere they go. I mean, it's not subtractive for them. And I want to do the same thing with Dallas. So, like, when I step in the room, I want you to know I'm from Dallas. Yes, I'm from Texas. I'm from Dallas. I'm not from Houston. And, you know, people in Oakland, like, say, I'm from Oakland. And even the outside cities, people be like, yeah, I'm from Hayward. I'm from Sac. I'm from Stockton. And I think you got to carry that hometown proud of where you're at, because when I was younger, I didn't understand how much Dallas had shaped and influenced me until I lived in areas outside of Dallas, until I lived in Oakland. And I was like, why do I have like this little distance, this little like dissonance? And I'm like, I think because I'm from Dallas, right? And I think you got to be very prideful of that, right? Just like how artists are prideful where they are, they rap where they're from. Like my favorite rappers rap like where they're from. They may emulate another rapper's structure or flow, but they are where they're at. And I think that is one of the best things you can do, in which people always say that creatives are in a oversaturated market, that there's too many podcasters, there's too many writers, there's too many models, too many this. Well, your authenticity makes you stand out. Where you're from is what makes you stand out. So I have to say, I give credit to Oakland and Philadelphia, both two coastal cities, who really made me understand that I'm really a Southerner, and I'm really from Dallas, and I'm really from Texas. And I'm proud of all those three things, right? So I think that's what living in the coast impacted me. And I always tell people to at least spend a year or two outside of your hometown, outside of where you were born and raised, because it will really have you foster a greater appreciation. And that's something that the pandemic has really shown creatives. I know so many people who were based in New York that moved to LA, or I know so many people in media who lived in New York and were like, you know what? I want to go back home. And it may not be a top one or a top tier market, but I've had my career in New York, and I know I can make my career back in my hometown. And I hope that that shift also challenges media to understand that, like, not every creative person has to live in New York and LA, that they can be in their hometown and still give you good work, but also use their platform to put on for the hometown. Because, baby, we gonna be in the house for a long amount of time. And there's gonna be a lot of innovation that's bred while we're in the house from local areas. So if the industry wanted to actually change, this would be the opportune moment to take it. But will they? Who knows?
Guess we'll see. No, I definitely feel that, because like you said, people taking that time away from their home to appreciate it. I don't think that I really appreciated DC and like the DMV culture till I went to college in North Carolina, till I had to live in VA Beach, where things are a lot different. VA Beach is 3 hours away technically, but it's so different. I mean, Baltimore's an hour away. Just the dynamic of being from here, I can tell when you're not from here.
Yeah.
I can tell artists from here's grind is like a lot different. Yeah, I feel like DMV is starting to get its shine a little bit, but it's still very much like, they're from the DMV. All right, they are good. Like, you brought up Damo, and I'm like, yeah, like, I've met Damo, and I can see the grind that Damo has, and I can see how much the culture is a part of everything that Damo does. With artists like Rico, sometimes Wale, he got his times.
Look, he was very major in the blog era, so I'll give that man his credit, and he was one of the first rappers to allow Meg to jump on the track. So,
you know, Wale got his moments, but you can tell the difference based on like who's from here and who's not. But it also gives me a sense of pride seeing other regions and other places that I've been have very similar grind as well. It may be different flow-wise or the beats that they put behind things, but the grind's all the same. With media being very much remote right now, it's our due diligence to allow these artists, these media professionals to stay in their local areas, because we're the people that you would probably want to talk to if you want new talent. We're the ones who are actually here in the mud, being with these people and interacting with them and hearing their music and hearing their growth. If mainstream media wants to captivate and take on the fact that this is how the world is right now, it's probably best to start looking in different avenues and not just in the New Yorks or the Atlantas or the LAs. A lot of artists and media professionals are taking advantage of this time, because I've seen a lot of people do online live concerts, which I would have never thought that would happen until this moment. The beauty of this time alone is coming up with that creative space. So with everything, what is the thing that you've been holding on to during this time to keep you motivated?
Yeah, I tell people find your community. And I'm very intentional about community. I think early on, when you're hustling and you're grinding, you were hustling and grinding with everyone else. That's good. That is wonderful. I remember the people when we all had less than 1,000 followers and we were just getting out articles and we were just in these writer group DMs and everything. And we were hustling and hustling and bustling. But I think as your career grows, as your intentions mature, you also gotta like be surrounded by people who are going to support, invest, and call you out in those periods when you're hot, in those periods when you're not. As creatives, we have months, we have quarters. It's great, it's great, it's great. We're getting commissions, we're getting all these things. And then we have periods where it's just like, ooh, child, I feel like I'm gonna have to rob someone if nobody comes in, right? Like, I ain't gonna get paid. And, you know, as my mother, she's a Southern woman, she talks about the era of fair weather friends. Find and invest in those people who are going to stay with you for the long haul. Find the people who, from the first article or major project you have, are also thinking about what is our exit plan, what is our sustainability plan, what is our long-term plan. People network horizontally and not vertically. You want to rise and grind with those people, but also like do your fact checks, right? Like you're buying a car. And I would say those people have held me down through it all. And some have been people who I've met on Twitter, who over time I've given them my number and we can FaceTime. Some of them are people who I knew prior to media, because I think creatives should also have non-media, non-creative friends to humble you. And sometimes the industry will hype you up and make you big-headed. And you need a friend to be like, girl, if you don't shut the fuck up. They are so useful. I'll be going off about media. One of my friends are like, is you done? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, great. Yourself with a multitude of people who are really going to be there, because you want to have that network of people. You want to build with a network. You don't want to be the only person on the top who has maybe acted ungenuine or unauthentic just to get to a certain place, just to get the 10K, just to get the swipe up feature, just to get the verification. Because what's the use of being at top if everybody hates you? You share that with someone. I would rather relish and share every moment I have with my people and with my community than be big-headed and be at the top by yourself. That the crabs in the barrel mentality is one of the worst things to happen in the creative industry. I'm always going to act against it. I always want to see Black women win. I want to see them win, but not at the expense of lessening myself or injuring myself to see us.
I definitely have non-media friends and media friends who are just like, okay, so you said that you were going to do this, where's it at? Very much accountability people, or times where I'm doubting myself. I forget that I'm so young and just in the beginning of my career. Instead of thinking of what I should have, I should be focusing on the things that I do have and the platform that I do have. My non-media friends are like, well, girl, you did all of this. I can't say that I did that. So how about we just sit in that moment and give yourself gratitude for what you're actually doing right now? We're getting close to the end, girl. But I do have a few more questions. So you mentioned your book with Big Tech. How does it feel to be close to being an author?
Yeah, book writing or writing with like the intention of a book or a book project is completely different than article or essay writing. There are so many revisions. I've never revised a piece so much in my whole entire life. Every day, it seems like there's an email and I'm like, again? But I'm very happy to archive history. I think that's one of my like favorite nerdy things about being a culture writer, is that I got to look at a very important part of history for me, for Dallas, for the South at that current moment, as I later found out. Even though I thought I knew everything in the world about Dallas hip hop, this book grabbed me by my hair and said, bitch, you don't. And I needed to get humbled. And this Halfway Books has humbled my ass. At the time, as I was talking about Southern hip hop and when that came mainstream, our hometown publications didn't cover Big Tuck. Right. He was a hometown legend. But at the time, a lot of our media, as we know, media is traditionally white and upper middle class, was not really paying attention to this nigga from the hood, even though he was one of the most sought after rappers in the state and in the region. And the claim later, after he signed with a major record company, then I found some later articles about him, like 2005 after. It's funny, I interviewed our music critic at the time, and he was like, yeah, it was a real failure on us. It's so interesting to go back in time and write a book about an artist who at the time too may have been like Superman or Batman. And then you look back and you're like, why weren't they written about? Or if they were written about, what was missed? I think one of my favorite books who did a good job of that is my friend Hanif's book On a Tribe Called Quest, Go Ahead in the Rain. I think was nominated for a National Book Award. Don't kill me. He just did a good job about what A Tribe Called Quest meant to him. And then also all the shit that went down in A Tribe Called Quest and how they regarded in pop culture. I think hip hop book writing is a little bit different because you get to insert more of yourself than you would in an article in a feature, where your job really is to highlight the artist and the angle you found. Where in a book, you can put yourself a little bit in dialogue with the conversation of the artist at the time. The great thing is that so many hip hop books are coming out. Clover Hope, who did the cover story on Beyonce for Vogue and Megan for W Magazine, has a woman in hip hop book coming out. One of my mentors, Regina Bradley, chronicling Stankonia, The Rise of the Hip Hop South, is coming out next year. There are so many books we have coming out about hip hop, and I'm really excited to be in the field with them as the little sister as always, because I'm always to them can you look over my book? How do I get a book agent? What's going on? So cool, because a lot of the people the writers that they follow are now making these great books that we get to really see in 2 years from now. I think that's what attracts me more about books, is that you get to spend a little bit more time having love and intention behind it, instead of this big ass deadline that's just bitch, you better get this in. Really have deadlines, but it's months and years and quarters. I literally was up last night because I had an article due today. To completely be honest, don't know what that last graph was. I'm afraid for her to read it, because I think the Lord really came through, and I didn't even touch it this morning when I woke up. So I hope she doesn't cuss me out and takes away my byline. It's one of my dream bylines. I hope that when this episode comes out, it will be published so I can link the piece to this episode and be this is literally what I was referencing to. I'm really excited about it, and I'm excited to turn the Big Tuck essay into a big book about the history of Dallas hip hop, which is my passion project. I've really wanted to do it for a while. Rent's a lot cheaper in Dallas, and the food is better to be aged.
I wasn't introduced to Big Tuck until researching about you, but I'm very excited. You mentioning these amazing hip hop books, because I'm definitely one of those nerds who wants to read about music. When I go to Barnes & Nobles, there's nothing. So I'm very excited to have some things to just bring in all of the hip hop creation to me. With this essay turned into a book, and your deadlines for all these articles and everything that have coming up that we may have not talked about, how do you secure your peace?
As we're literally talking, I see 3 candles in arm's range for me. I'm a big aromatherapy, plants. The worst thing about being a creative and working from home is that you have to section segments of your home to be your working area, but also making it peaceful and finding time for rest. I'm the biggest proponent of missing deadlines and changing deadlines. One of the writers I love the most, Yvette Dion, editor-in-chief of Bitch Media, she tweeted something with her therapist, or something that she was in conversation with her therapist, and basically the therapist said deadlines can be changed. I think that's the thing, is that starting up, I would damn near almost kill myself, push myself too hard to make deadlines, right? For a vast majority of my freelance career, the vast majority, from when I first got started until May 8th, I was either in undergraduate school, graduate school, or my full-time job. This is from May 8th to now is the only time I've been a full-time freelancer. You have to incorporate periods for rest and restoration along with those hustle and bustle moments. And especially for writers, you also have to create time to read. Because when you get these essays. For example, I just did an essay about protest and pop music. I had to go back and read about protest and pop music before I could write the essay. When you're figuring out your schedule as a creative, whether you have a full-time job or you're in school or everything, you gotta make these certain segments just for like, this is my 1 hour off my phone. This is my 1 hour to nap. This is my 1 hour to cook. These are my 2 to 3 hours I'm on airplane mode and I'm grinding. This is when I talk to my friends. Like, you gotta really go in there and kind of cut and dissect it, because being a full-time creative is great until you realize you have to be your own boss, manager, accountant, publicist, all of these things. You are only one human being with 24 hours. So
Right.
I always tell people, make time for your peace, because burnout is a thief of all joy and will be the fastest thing to kick you out of the creative industry.
Yeah, I feel that I've had to take a step back and like just chill. I feel like those are the times where I have the most creativity, because I'm allowing my mind to just be and like flow. Mm-hmm. So I definitely feel like creatives need to structure some time of silence in their life, in their day-to-day. But I'm so grateful that you were on this episode. Thank you so much. You don't understand how much this means to me. But do you have any last words to the audience?
To quote my girl, real fucking hot girl shit, real fucking Texas shit, real be hot girl journalist shit. I want y'all to go out there and chase a bag, secure a bag, but not at the cost of your physical well-being. And cry a little bit. Niggas need to cry. And that's okay. You pick yourself back up. So those would be all of my testaments.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing episode. If you want to listen to anything else, you can follow us on socials, Instagram, The Lituation R Pod, Twitter. You can also our website, www.thelituationroompodcast.co. I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.